Welcome to Report from Arbroath. This episode is brought to you by Warwick Spice. Learn more at warwickspice.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to Reports from Arbroath. Our guest today hails from New South Wales in Australia, 10,151 miles from Arbroath, and she's a very familiar and popular figure in the world of cricket broadcasting. Melinda Farrell studied at the University of Canberra, from which she emerged with a degree in TV communications and journalism. On that degree, she's built an excellent career in TV and radio, and her warmth, wit and knowledge of cricket has earned her a big following across the world. In recent years, she's split her time between her native Australia and England, where she has a base in Birmingham. Whether it be an Ashes contest, a full house franchise fixture, or a damp grey day in the county championship, Mel applies the same journalistic standards and commitment to each. Mel, many thanks for joining us. The life of a globe-trotting cricket broadcaster sounds a pretty glamorous gig. I'm guessing it's not all glamour.
Well, you only have to see me today, and thank goodness this is mostly for a podcast, because otherwise people would see that I have raced here with wet hair out of the shower because I've just come back from Durham, and I've got to write a piece today and get myself ready to head to Nottingham, to Trent Bridge, and then I'm pretty much on the road for the next month. So, yes, it sometimes seems very glamorous, and of course I tend to just share the good pictures on Instagram, but there's so much about it that's not particularly glamorous. But I consider myself incredibly fortunate to do what I do. It is probably not necessarily always what people think it's like, perhaps on the outside.
Yesterday was a classic example. A train from Newcastle with not much rolling stock, for example. There's not much glamour to that, is
Oh, it's so glamorous standing shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of strangers in the vestibule of a train carriage because they'd only put 4 carriages on from the Edinburgh to Plymouth train. Why? Yes, so that's less. There've been other ones as well. I mean, luckily I'm not the sort of person who requires luxuries. So I've stayed in some pretty ropey accommodation at times, and I thought, God, how have I ended up here? But then there'll be the other extreme where I'll be staying somewhere absolutely incredible and be thinking, how on earth have I ended up in this? So you do just get some massive extremes, as you do whenever you travel. Any traveler would know that.
How many miles do you travel in an average year, Mel?
Oh, I don't know. I was just interested in your 10,000. So you've got to double that just for me to get between here in Australia. But gosh, I couldn't even make a guess. It's been a few, because I mean, already this year from Australia, I went to South Africa for the SA20 and back, and I actually came to the UK via the US. So that was a bit of a long way around. Yeah, and then I'm pinging about Europe a bit. I'm off to Italy to commentate on some women's T20 World Cup qualifiers. Up to Scotland a couple of times up to Scotland to do some limited overs stuff up there, and then of course pinging about this country on the train, sometimes standing in vestibules. So and I don't even know what I'll be doing sort of come October yet. So it's a lot of miles.
It is a lot of miles, and that can be quite grueling, isn't it? But the nature of your job, you've got to be well researched, you've got to be bright, and you've always got to be ready for the next day's work, haven't you? Which I guess is a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things that people don't necessarily see or understand, is the amount of prep time. Not everyone does as much as prep as I tend to do, and that's because I'm coming when I'm commentating. Of course, I'm a journalist as well, but when I'm commentating, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm not a former professional player. So I always feel like I need to do more than everyone. So, and also, say for example, on the county championship, people there have been doing it a lot longer than me, and they tend to have their team. So they've got a base of knowledge that is so deep and broad. Whereas for me, I don't have that same depth of anywhere near the depth of knowledge as someone like yourself will have on Warwickshire, for example. So that's why I do like getting the train a lot of the time, because it's like, okay, here's a couple of hours where I can actually just, if I've got the Wi-Fi working, that I can do some prep. So I get really annoyed when I have to stand up on a train, because I suddenly feel like I've lost really valuable hours. But I was doing that last night. Last night I was for the Italy trip. There are probably 90 odd players there who I've never seen before, who have virtually no information available online apart from basic stats on Cricinfo. So I've actually got a survey sent out to all the team managers to get the players to fill in, so that I've got accurate information on everything from what they bowl and what their playing role is, to where they were born, how they started playing cricket, all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, last night, even though I was exhausted, I actually sat up and went through about 60 surveys to get those kind of ready for next week. So there's a lot of prep.
Well, that's brilliant prep, and it shows in your work, if I may say so. But that's why you are so well established now, and of course you are, and it is in many ways a great job that you have now. But you have thoroughly earned it, haven't you? And you say your background wasn't obviously as a professional cricketer. So tell us a little bit about how your pathway from a youngster in Australia to where you are now.
Well, I came over to England soon after I finished uni, and was just freelancing as a director's assistant in broadcast for Sky Sports, mostly on the Super League, the Rugby League. So I knew the M62 corridor like the back of my hand, love. Spent a lot of time in places like Wigan and Leeds, but they actually sponsored me, which was pretty amazing. And so I ended up getting a residency, a work permit and residency, and was able to apply for a passport. And I was really fortunate, because it was in this period where, because the Australian government has flipped back and forth on, at times, if you apply for another country's passport, you have to give up your Australian passport, and then it changes again. These things always change around. And I became eligible for a passport in a window. There was a 2-year window when you didn't have to give up your Australian passport. So I got my passport, went, great. And then I went back home to Australia, thinking I don't know if I'm ever really going to use this, but I'm glad I've got it. And then when I went back, I was working as a reporter, freelancing. I was doing a lot of regional news and sport, and I'll go down to Sydney every weekend after working through the week, and I would do freelance shifts at Fox Sports News. And then I started doing more feature stuff for Fox Sports, and I would do rugby league in the winter and cricket in the summer, as well as whatever other work I could find. And yeah, cricket ended up taking over. I was signed by Cricket Australia to join cricket.com.au when it started. That was sort of when it really started to take off, and I worked for them for 3 months. I'd signed a 2-year contract, and I left after 3 months. It was a 13-14 Ashes, and I realised that it wasn't the right environment for me, so I left. And then during that Ashes series, I'd met George DeBell and Jared Kimber from Cricinfo, and they said that Cricinfo were looking for someone to do video for them. So I was having trouble nailing down the editor of the website, Sambit Bal. He wasn't replying to my emails. But Jared and George told me that he was going to be at the Oval on day 3 of the 4th test between England and India. So this was 2014. And so I engineered a trip. I flew over here. I put it on my credit card. I went back and did my old job with Sky Sports of being a director's assistant. Hadn't done it in ages. And and I covered women's cricket. I did whatever I could do to just earn enough money to keep myself going until day 3 of the 4th test. And so I sat with him in the overflow area of the oval. He couldn't get away from me. And within like about 24 hours, we shook hands and I had a job with Cricinfo.
Well, that's all credit to you. Chris Rokes actually spoke to us a few weeks ago about, as a player, as a young sports person, there are windows and doors that open and you've got to go through them at the right time. And it sounds like you spotted that opportunity and that shaped your career.
Yeah, it did. And that's why sometimes I push back when people say to me, "Oh, you're so lucky to have this job," because there's the biggest piece of luck I think that you ever have is the situation in which you're born. Yeah, where and to whom and the financial circumstances, all that sort of stuff. But boy, I really do believe in making luck. And a lot of things that have happened to me have been because I've been willing to take a risk so many times. And I know that there are plenty of people, honestly, who would not be able to cope with my lifestyle because they wouldn't be able to cope with the uncertainty, financial insecurity, just going off and not knowing what when you're going to be back home. A lot of people don't have the luxury of being able to make those decisions because they've got whatever commitments. But that's the path I've chosen. And so while there's some fortune along the way, it has been a lot of hard work to get here. Not just hard work. It's been being willing to just put everything on the line. I certainly did on that trip. That was it where I just thought, I'm just going for it. And there have been a few times in my life where I've done that, and you don't know, could all end up falling in a heap when you do it. But it's worked out so far.
It has worked out so far. Of course, there are some wonderful matches you've covered, some wonderful people you've met. There, alongside it all, underpinning it all, of course, is the nuts and bolts of freelancing, isn't there? When a freelance anything, you're dependent on, are they going to pay? Am I going to get work? Making it all fit in. Am I available? There's a lot of planning go into a freelance lifestyle, isn't there?
I have a spreadsheet that it's probably unhealthy. I must look at it at least 10 times a day because it's like a calendar, but I'm always putting things on there. Just even things like where I see a day where that's not colored in, it's all color coded with who I'm working for. And when I see a spare day, I'll look ahead and go, okay, that is a day that I can use to prep for that. Because otherwise, if I don't, then these other days will be taken up, and I'll be chasing my tail. But if I showed you that sheet and some of the mad things that I'm going to do this summer, like I'm going to be commentating in Forfarshire on one day, and then I've worked out if I stay in Edinburgh that night and get a 5 a.m. train, I can be at Lord's for a couple of days of the World Test Championship, and then fly back that night to be back in Glasgow for some other games. It's just insane. So it's a real jigsaw puzzle. But then the payment thing can be. It once took me. Look, I think it took. It was well over 2 years to get paid, and quite often, it can be 6 months or more. But you're still having to pay to get to places to work. So it's this constant roundabout of juggling and working out finances and another spreadsheet of when I've completed work, when I've invoiced, have I sent a reminder, have I been paid, all of those things.
Yeah. A thought that strikes me, actually, you're going to be in Scotland, aren't you, a little bit? You're not going to be that far from Arbroath if you fancy just popping up and taking it in. But
Is it near Dundee?
it's not that far away.
Oh no, it's not. I have seen it on the map.
Yeah, I think
I
you
tell
must
you
go.
what.
You must go and report in from Arbroath.
Okay, that's on the list then. I'm up there with Andrew Leonard. He's got a car. Last time we did this gig last year up there, we did go to St Andrews and had a fantastic day. So
I would look forward to your report from Arbroath.
Yeah.
But you've spoken that's really interesting about the nuts and bolts of it all. But I mean, of course, within it all, there are some great moments and some great times that you've been to. So just tell us about, is it fatuous to ask you to pick out highlights? I mean, what are the games do you think, wow, I was there?
Definitely, the whole summer of 2019 in England. I mean, it's an obvious one, isn't it? But I when you have actual visceral memories of where you were sitting and what you could see and how you were feeling and that World Cup final at Lord's, mind-blowing. But probably that, I'll always go back. I reckon, whenever I'm losing my memories as a little old lady or whatever, the day of cricket I will remember the most will be Headingley 2019 and that Ben Stokes innings. Like, I'll never forget that. If I watch back highlights, I'll still get crazy goosebumps from that. And do you know, it's really funny. I remember the whole day, because at the end of that test, I've done all the post-match stuff and videos and all this sort of thing. And by that stage, so I think the match finished probably at about 4 in the afternoon or something. I reckon it was about 8 o'clock. And I was in a taxi going back to the hotel. And I got a call from the editor at Cricinfo. And he said, look, we've just been talking and we've sort of covered everything from the day. But we thought it'd be great if you could actually just write a piece about the entire match. I've gone, 8 o'clock. I'm emotionally spent. The entire match. Okay, so I went back to the hotel. And just by coincidence, because I never stay in the same hotel as players, and I never know where teams are staying. But I was actually staying in the England team hotel, which I didn't realise. Anyway, I thought, if I go back to my room, I'm going to be so tired. I can't sit in there and write. So they had a bar up on the roof. And I went up there. I thought, I'm going to have a glass of wine and sit down and just gather my thoughts and write. And then I realised, I saw a couple of the players. I thought, oh, God, there. So I went and hid in a corner. And the players never realised I was there. So I was hiding in a corner, writing until probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And every now and again, I'd see a player come out and have a cheeky cigarette on the balcony or whatever. And it was actually quite inspiring, because for some reason that helped me write, because I'd see them and it'd remind me of something that they'd done in the game, and they'd be like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember that now. So that was amazing. But there are other random ones, like the first test in Ireland against Pakistan. That was one of the great weeks, the absolute great weeks. Brendan McCullum's fastest ever century at Hagley Oval in Christchurch. Again, I've strong memories of where I was sitting and laughing with Jeff Lemon, because it was the most ridiculous innings we'd ever seen. Yeah, so the women's T20 World Cup final at MCG with 86,000 people, that was right up there.
What about the county championship match between Warwickshire and Surrey the other week? When
That was not one. Do you know what was? I can tell you one I always remember, because it was when I first actually thought, I get the county championship now. It was it 2017 when when Middlesex won at Lord's, and they played Yorkshire in that game, and it was a three-way battle between Somerset, Middlesex and Yorkshire, and it was the crazy game where everyone was like checking permutations and bonus points, and at one point, they were desperately trying to hold on to avoid to not lose a bonus barrel, wherever the situation was, and then they had to go off a bad light and rain, and I feel like it was Ryan Sidebottom was batting with, was it Tim Bresnan? I don't know. It was it? And see, I do remember this. And at one point, I went out the back on that final day at the media centre in Lord's and looked out the back over the nursery ground. And there were people, literally, I'm not exaggerating, there were people running. They were running up past the nursery ground from they'd obviously come from St John's Wood. And they were running to be there. And it was so exciting. And, we were hearing reports of the Somerset players were all gathered around sort of watching this as well. And that's the first time I really got it. I thought, okay, I get this. And Toby Rowland-Jones finished it off with a hat trick. Went and spoke with him afterwards. So And so that was actually a really special game because at the time I've always thought that was one of the best games of cricket I'd ever seen at any level.
Yeah, the county championship at its best is pretty special, isn't it? But you mentioned briefly there bad light and rain, of course, two of the integral parts of English cricket. What are the differences? Is there a different culture to English cricket and Australian cricket domestically? Different worlds?
Massive. Not just the weather. Speaking of which, I mean, it's been beautiful this year, apart from being cold at times.
Well, you think it's cold when we think it's quite warm, don't
I've just come back in Tessela Street. I was wearing almost every piece of clothing I'd taken up there. I had 4 layers. I had like 3 T-shirts and I had to borrow Martin Emerson's jacket as well. It's freezing. Anyway, yeah, it's a very different culture in that I would say I know people were seeing those videos do the round of the Sheffield Shield final in South Australia with fans running onto the ground and everything else. And I saw comments, people saying, "Oh, when the county championship here is dying and blah, blah, blah." Like, no, 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 no. That is an anomaly. I've been to a lot of Sheffield Shield games where I make it a thing if I'm ever at a ground when there's a Sheffield Shield match being played, I count the fans. And quite often I don't get to 50. So it's a very, very different environment because there's not a club structure. So you don't have members. So there's not that same investment. And I find the coverage around it, there's still, obviously, there are people who love watching it and it's very high quality. But the media interest around the Sheffield Shield is often very much based on who's in contention for the Australian team. So, there still is some, but it's not, it's just not quite the same. And I know very few Australians, and I don't think I know any who aren't either involved with an actual team or a journalist. I know a couple of journalists who would say differently. But other than that, I don't know anyone who would say they were a mad, Victoria fan or a mad Tasmania fan or Queensland or whatever, in the same way that if you ask if cricket fans in this country, if you say, who do you support? They'll say, I support Surrey in England. Or, sometimes they'll say, I'm not that bothered about England, I'm a Somerset fan. So that is a very, very different sort of aspect to the culture. And I often say in Australia, there are a lot of people who watch, because it's always said it's a national sport. Test cricket gets big viewing in the summer months, but it's on free-to-air television. And a lot of people who watch cricket in Australia, I think, are people who quite like watching sport and they like watching cricket because it's on in the summer. They're not necessarily die-hard cricket fans who follow it. They don't even follow Australia when they're playing in World Cups overseas. It's just not a thing. They're all on the footy at that stage. It's not to the extent that English fans will be heavily invested in England, home and away throughout the winter wherever they are. It's quite different. And again, it's not to say there aren't the people who do that in Australia, but yeah, it's even at the moment, the World Test Championship finals coming on, and there's a bit of a thing in Australia because it's on Amazon Prime. They got the rights to the ICC events. And so time difference, unless they're able to do a deal that gets it on free-to-air television, it'll hardly be seen by anyone.
I guess the travelling is an element as well, isn't it? Because in England, you can pretty much get to any county ground in a couple of hours, can't you? But, well, one thing that occurs to me as well is that, going off on a tangent, you have built your career in what was once a very male-dominated industry, like so many industries.
It still is. What are you on about?
Well, that's what I was going to... Less so now, hopefully. But have you had to... Do you think you've had to battle that a little bit harder? And have you encountered much prejudice? And
I just think it took me a lot longer to find my voice because I was always, when I joined, there were things that were said, not necessarily deliberately, but there were times when I encountered an attitude, especially it was a triple whammy, female, blonde, coming from a TV background. So all of those things meant that I felt like I wasn't taken seriously or particularly respected as such. Because there is, and it still exists, but less so now. But there is that kind of feeling that the serious reporters and journalists are the ones who write, and then the ones who are in TV in particular are just there, to say the obvious, to ask the obvious questions, and it's actually often it's a bit of a lack of understanding about what the two different roles are. But yeah, absolutely. I felt it. I had to earn my stripes more than when you've got guys who come into it. Just there'd be little comments that would be made, and you'd be like, and all the fact that you'd be sitting in a press box with your colleagues, and a former player might come up and they would talk to my male colleagues and ask them, what they were thinking. They would never, ever, ever never ask me. So I would notice the conversations that would be cricket based when I was there that you'd kind of be excluded from, and that was hard because I'm not always particularly confident anyway. So it took quite a while for me to actually start to feel like I kind of belonged. And working at Cricinfo was probably that was the biggest thing for me, because it's so highly respected generally, and you're around people, and my colleagues there were great. They were the ones who really encouraged me to write more. They wanted me to write more, and they didn't make me feel stupid. I was always so worried if I said something that I would say something stupid. So then commentary was really terrifying as well, because then I was really afraid. At least when you're writing, you can go, hang on a second, you can check it, but you can't do that. And I say there I do still say things that are stupid. And people don't always realize, as you will, when you've got the commentary position that we've got and the player's got his back to you, you can't always tell if the ball's come off the pad or the bat or what the hell's happened.
Well, I mean, thinking back to when I did quite a bit of third voicing, the trouble now is it's all live streamed, isn't it? So if you get something wrong, everybody can, that's not right, that's not okay.
Yeah, no. And that's something, because we don't get the live stream until it's on a delay. So you can check it afterwards. But sometimes I've learned the thing of being careful about committing until I can check and make sure, because the camera's actually got a much better view than we do sitting up in the gods at Edgbaston when they're playing on one of the side strips. So we're basically at, like, somewhere at I don't know, backward point or whatever it seems at times.
Well, it's much to your credit that you weathered the early hostility from some quarters.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say hostility. It was just, you just had to, I don't know, you had to prove, you really had to prove yourself. I think that's more so, and it's better now. I think there's more understanding and more of a welcoming nature when I'll say, I can't say it in Australia because there are no other female journalists in Australia who cover men's cricket. Not unless it's a real one-off or something. So there's been no one else come in since I've been in Australia. But there have been in England, and there's definitely more awareness and understanding amongst the guys in the press box about that it must be, quite difficult to come in as a female journalist. And Danny Rubin has also been brilliant at the ECB. I think he's quite aware of whenever there might be something that might make people feel a little bit out of joint, and he does his best to make sure that things are good here. But Australia's just completely still very male, and when I'm not there, no other female has toured with the Australian team in the past 10 years that I've been there. So,
well, sports press boxes over here have evolved a long way as they needed to, and hopefully that process and people like yourself will help that process, won't you, by being there and welcoming other women into the press box, so it's not quite, nobody needs to feel alienated anymore. So hopefully that process is ongoing.
I hope so. It's hard because there's been more pressure on broadcasters, whether it's television or radio, to actually have like diversify their commentary, and that's not just male female. It's about having, you know, not just a team of a commentary team of fast bowlers or batters or you want a voice from other countries if you've got other countries touring as well. So it's all about having a team. So there's been more pressure on broadcasters because you can see and you can hear a female. But in the written media, there's not been that pressure because no, you can't see or hear a voice or see a person or hear a voice in a written piece. So the written media worldwide is still very male dominated. It's changing a bit more in the subcontinent, I think. I see more progress there than I do just about anywhere.
You have got a dual life now, of course, between England and Australia. Those two teams will meet in a certain series later on. You're still a very proud Aussie, aren't you? So that
I don't think I am a very proud Aussie.
there's nothing wrong with being very proud Aussie, but where will your affections be in the Ashes?
So my affections people love this. People love to try and say I'm on one team side or another, and the fact that they can't agree is probably a good thing. When I say I'm not a proud Aussie, I'm not. Yeah, I'm a dual citizen. I've spent a huge part of my adult life in England, and I feel very at home when I'm here as well. So, I'm not like really partisan in that way. And I actually, when it comes to cricket around the world, it would be a benefit to cricket worldwide to see that team do well. I'm quite an egalitarian, so I'm usually on the side of the underdog. I think it's boring when one team wins all the time. And I've spent a lot of time doing associate cricket, and that sort of intensifies that as well. So, but I'm also won over by individuals. If I do some interviews with various players and add those interactions, and I think they're a genuinely nice person, I like to see them do well because I'm soft in the end.
Oh, Mel, I agree 100% with that.
That's why we all love Chris Wokes, right? We always want Chris Wokes to do well.
I remember one time chatting to Ashley Giles when he was director of cricket, and he was building his squad at Warwickshire, and I said, why don't you just go for 11 nice guys? He says, well, we might get relegated. It doesn't matter. I mean, if they're good guys, that's what we all want. They're the people we want to succeed. But that's really interesting, Mel, because I guess it is, everybody, you meet someone, you like them, they're respectful, you want them to do well. And it almost transcends the team, doesn't it?
I mean, when it comes down to it, what I hope is that it's a competitive series because I was there for the COVID one, the last one in Australia, and I mean it was horrible. They were broken before it started, really, and there was some stuff that was going on too that wasn't really publicly known, um, but when you realise just how dreadful things were behind the scenes, yeah, I can understand why. Stuart Broad's comments were taken way out of context when he said in his mind, it was a void series. He wasn't saying that the series should be wiped off the records or it didn't count. He was saying in his mind that the way that he looked back on it, all the stuff that went on there meant that he was just putting that one out of his mind and drawing a line through it, which is fine. But like everything that gets said around the Ashes series, I think it was blown up. It happens when the Australians say things, when the English say things. So that happened, but I can understand it. And I remember feeling so sorry for Joe Root. When you talk about nice people in cricket, I mean, he is possibly the most unselfish he cares about everyone. He cares about the net bowlers. He cares about the kids who, are lining up to watch him play it. He in that series, you'd see him just been smashed, and you'd do an interview. It's always, you're doing an interview with someone who's just been smashed and everything. and he'd be saying, "Are you okay? Are you coping okay with this COVID stuff?" And you're going, "Oh my God, he cares so much about everyone else. If like the whole world is on his shoulders." But I think that's because he's genuinely a really good and kind person. But I felt so awful for the guy. I really did. And so whatever happens, I just really, really hope that this is a competitive series, because the last couple in Australia haven't been. And I think it'd be great for the game. I think it'll be really exciting. I know a lot of people love to bash it, but I think what Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes have done with his side has made things fun. It makes it really fun to cover. So while there are a lot of Australians who like to really trash everything that England say or do around it, man, I think it's fun, and it's giving them something to talk about as well, isn't it? And ultimately, that's a good thing. We're all talking about cricket.
Absolutely. May the nicest team win. Mel, it's been an absolute joy. Just one thing that strikes me, you have been first-time witness to an awful lot of great games and great people. I know you're a bit busy, but you'll have to write a book at some stage, you know.
Oh yeah, some people have said that. Do you know what? I've started. I started writing a book and putting some things together, but it's actually it's a fiction. It's a novel. It's a sexy thriller set in the world of cricket.
My word.
I know.
That would be a first.
It's probably going to take me 5 years to finish it, but I have made a start on that. I don't think anyone would be interested in reading a book about me. So, well, maybe I'll change my mind one day.
If the British Rail or the railway system in this country can get some more rolling stuff, you
Yeah.
might be able to get on with it a bit quicker. But
Exactly.
Mel, we look forward to that, and thank you ever so much for joining us, and go well for the rest of the season, wherever it takes you.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be on commentary again at some point soon. Brian, and I very much look forward to it.
Take care.
Reports from Arbroath is an Orion Creative Services production. To listen to more episodes, to read our blog, or to join our mailing list, please visit reportsfromarbroath.com.